Good morning. Welcome back to another exciting adventure of For the Glory of God and Kings. I'm Travis Finley, your host, and we are reading the Bible for the first time again. We are going to look at a principle that I brought up in a previous episode, I think maybe around episode 27, and it is the principle of the Avenger of Blood. We're just going to jump into it. Numbers 35. Numbers 35 is the account of God's making provision for those who have committed manslaughter, either intentionally or not. God sets up cities of refuge for the uh, for those who are in trouble. That is the Avenger is in the Bible the nearest of kin. So, we've got all these great movies. I think Liam Neeson back in the 80s, I think, what was the name of the movie? Kin? It might have just been Kin. So, he avenges the blood of his kin who died at the hands of the McCoys. But here, the Avenger of Blood is the one who comes to exact justice on the murderer, the one who committed manslaughter. And once you're in the city, it is a city of refuge. The Avenger of Blood, um, cannot carry out his vengeance once the city is um, entered into by the guilty party. He is safe. It's King's X until the death of the high priest, and the death of the high priest then, or the death of the person himself. If that person dies within the city, then obviously there's no vengeance to be taken. But if the high priest dies while the man is still alive in the city, then the high priest's death atones for that man's crime. However, if that man is caught by the Avenger of Blood before he gets into the city, then vengeance is had and the land is kept pure from bloodshed. Okay, so there are 6 cities for refuge for the sons of Israel, that anyone who kills a person unintentionally may flee there. But if he struck him down with an iron object so that he died, he is a murderer, and the murderer shall surely be put to death. If he struck him down with a stone, he will die. He's a murderer. The avenger of blood himself shall put the murderer to death. He shall put him to death when he meets him. If he pushed him in hatred or threw something at him lying in wait as a result that he died, he is a murderer. The blood avenger shall put the murderer to death. Okay, so you have the guilty party, and then you have the blood avenger. The congregation shall deliver the manslayer from the hand of the blood avenger, and the congregation shall restore him to his city of refuge to which he fled, and he shall live in it until the death of the high priest. Okay? But if the manslayer at any time goes beyond the border of his city of refuge to which he may flee, the blood avenger finds him outside, and the blood avenger kills the manslayer, he will not be guilty of blood. Okay, so again, even here, do you hear an echo of the Passover? Right, we just looked at that in the very previous episode from this, that you have to stay within the place of refuge. In the Passover, it was the home. If you stay in the home, you're safe. If you leave the home, the blood avenger, which was the avenging angel, will destroy you. Okay, he should have remained in the city of refuge until the death of the high priest. But after the death of the high priest, the manslayer shall return to the land of his possession. All right. So, you shall not pollute the land in which you are, for blood pollutes the land, and no expiation can be made for the land for the blood that is shed on it, except by the blood of him who shed it. You shall not defile the land in which you live, in the midst of which I dwell, for I am Yahweh, dwelling in the midst of the sons of Israel. Okay, so bloodshed pollutes the land. The land is God's sanctuary space, and blood pollutes that space if it's murder, if it's manslaughter. The shedding of blood in God's land pollutes it, defiles the land. Okay, and there's no way to cleanse the land of that blood unless the person who shed blood by murder, unless his life is taken by the Avenger. If that happens, the blood is cleansed, the land is cleansed. If he goes into the city of refuge, the land is still defiled until the death of the high priest, because you cannot atone for murder. Okay, there is no atoning for murder. The only way you atone for murder is by forfeiting your life as the murderer. Okay, so let's go back to the story of Cain and Abel and just hear some of the associations here. Okay. Now it came about in the course of time, Cain brought an offering to Yahweh of the fruit of the ground. Abel also brought the firstlings of his flock. Yahweh had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain he had no regard. So Cain became very angry. And Yahweh said to Cain, "Why are you angry? And why is your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be lifted up? But if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is for you, but you must master it." Cain spoke to his brother Abel, and it came about when they were in the field that Cain rose up against Abel and killed him. Then Yahweh said to Cain, "Where's your brother?" And Cain said, "Am I my brother's keeper? I don't know where he's at." And Yahweh said, "What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground. Now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand." Okay? So now you have bloodshed on the land, and you have the blood of the victim crying out to God for vengeance. Okay? That's what it means. Your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground. Avenge my death, right? I mean, hear that echo in Revelation where you have the souls under the altar. I think it's Revelation 6. You have the souls under the altar crying out to God, "How long are we going to wait until you avenge our blood?" Okay? So, bloodshed with Cain and Abel. The blood cries out from the ground for God to take vengeance. Okay? Then we have the story in Exodus where you have the um, Pharaoh commanded all of his people, saying, "Every son who is born you are to cast into the Nile, and every daughter you are to keep alive." Okay? And then Moses coming to um, when you have Moses coming to Pharaoh, he performs his first judgment plague, right? First judgment plague is Yahweh said to Moses, "Pharaoh's heart is stubborn. He refuses to let the people go. So go to Pharaoh in the morning as he is going out to the water, and station yourself to meet him on the bank of the Nile. By this you shall know that I am Yahweh. Behold, I will strike the water that is in the Nile with the staff that is in my hand, and it will be turned to blood." All right? Now, this is a weird story. Why does God do this? Why is this the first sign? God is intimating to Pharaoh, "I am going to rain down on your head vengeance for all of the innocents that you shed in um, 40 years ago when Moses was born." Okay? So God is avenging the death of the innocents. All right? When we get into the New Testament, we have a recapitulation of this story with the birth of Christ, right? The birth of Christ and another king who is Herod, but he's the new Pharaoh. And he then repeats this slaughter of the innocents. He sends out his troops into Bethlehem, and they kill all of the boys that are 2 years old and younger, okay, just to make sure they're covering their bases. So you have slaughter of the innocents. You have a new pollution on the land of bloodshed, right? And you need to know that if there's bloodshed on the land, God is going to avenge it. So, in our minds, when we're reading of this slaughter of the innocents by Herod in Matthew, that we know God is going to avenge those who were slaughtered. Okay? So, I made this connection yesterday. I was listening to a sermon on Passover, and I heard a tune in my mind that I put together, and I want to throw it at you to see what you have to say, okay? I think this makes a whole lot of sense to me, and I hope it makes a whole lot of sense to you, and I hope you guys agree, and maybe even somebody of you out there who are more attuned with the commentaries, you'll say, yeah, Joe and so said this like 300 years ago. So we've already made the connection, but I've never heard this connection before, and I think it's better suited for this. Okay, we have Jesus beginning his ministry in the book of John, and we have this account. Okay, on the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there, and both Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding. Now the wine ran out. And the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no more wine." And Jesus said, "Woman, what does this have to do with me? My time is not yet come." And his mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he says." Now, there were 6 water pots set for each of the Jewish customs, set there for the Jewish custom of purification, containing 20 or 30 gallons of water each. And Jesus said, "Fill the water pots with water." So they filled them to the brim. And Jesus said, "Draw some water out and take it to the head waiter." Now, when the head waiter tasted the water, which had become wine, he did not know where it came from. But the servants who had drawn the water knew. Okay? Every man serves good wine first, and when they have drunk freely, you have kept the good wine until now. Okay, now, most explanations talk about the 6 water pots, and they are with the Jewish water pots for purification. And then they talk about the wine in a positive way, which I don't think is eliminated, but they talk about it in a positive way, that in the new covenant, wine is a symbol of restoration and celebration and renewal, okay? And I'm not saying that's eliminated. I'm asking if this is also perhaps an echo of the avenging of blood also. Okay, so we have here water that is turned to blood, because that's what wine is a symbol of in the biblical symbolism. Wine is the symbol of blood. In communion, when we drink the wine, we are drinking the blood of Christ. Okay, so this is also said to be Jesus's first sign. And a sign is a sign of judgment, right? His signs and wonders that he does are not just signs of deliverance, they are, but they are also signs of judgment. And I'm trying to say, I think there's a connection here that we need to make, that in this first sign of Jesus, he is Moses turning the water into blood, and he is now calling up the reckoning of vengeance. This generation is going to be judged according to the Avenger of blood. Okay? Now, there's a lot of filling in here and finessing and sharpening or smoothing out the rough edges. But I just thought of this yesterday. So I'm throwing it out to you. I would love to hear from you and find out what you think, if this has got some merit to it at all. My name is Travis Finley, and this is For the Glory of God and Kings, and we are reading the Bible for the first time.